So today I'm going to talk about Valorant's schedule, because maybe not this year, but I think next year and as we go into future years as well, I think that the VCT schedule problem might become more pronounced than it currently is. Let's begin with some tweets, and we'll start with FNS here. This was tweeted out after kind of qualifying for Masters Tokyo, but before the tournament started. Now that we've qualified and it's all said and done, I'll say it again. This format took everything out of us. We played one match a week for 9 weeks, then played 5 matches, 2 of which were best of 5s in 1 week. Now we have Tokyo, then Champs a month later, then 5 months off. Bruh. Now, it's not going to be 5 months off, and we'll get to that in a bit, but you understand the overall point. And then Boaster also replied to this as well. I was just about to tweet this too. Great minds think alike. This season was so tough and we weren't even losing. I'd love to have a break mid-season or something. It was non-stop. And so it seems pretty clear that, especially for those top teams like Fnatic, like NRG, who are going to go far in tournaments, be playing a lot of games, it seems that the toll is taking its toll already on some of these players. And that's only about to get a lot worse. Because this year, we had lock-in. And that was a nice reprieve for the players, whether they knew it or not. Because at lock-in, it was a single elimination tournament. So, a lot of the teams, half the teams only played 1 game anyway. And then, most teams were playing 2, maybe 3 games max. And actually only 4 teams, went on further in the tournament. And obviously it only lasted 3 weeks here. As you can see, the kickoff tournament, lock-in, only lasted 3 weeks. An international league split lasts 2 months. And so that's a very long time compared to 3 weeks. And the thing is, and this is where FNS got this wrong, there's not going to be 5 months off, because that's going to be a lot shorter, because we're going to be starting in January, probably next year, because we need those extra months to fit in a whole nother one of these, right? And then another Masters tournament. And so again, imagine next year, if the players are already complaining after just doing 1 international league split, imagine you're Fnatic next year, you play a whole in an international league split, you then win a Masters, let's say, you then get barely any time off to then do that whole thing again, and then play another Masters again. This is going to definitely be a problem, as I'm sure most of you can already see. And that's not even to mention that this year, of course, there was kind of the novelty factor of, it's a new place. We're going to, Berlin or LA or Seoul for the first time, right? We're living in these places for the first time. Oh, look, these arenas are really cool. Oh, so for the first couple weeks, people were probably pretty excited to be there. It was this new experience. Next year, for every team who isn't an Ascension team, that's not going to be the case. The burnout is going to be even more pronounced straight away, because it's just a familiar experience that you've done many times before. I don't know what some of you people are thinking. These people play video games for a living, Crimea River, and, that might be fair in one sense, but you have to remember that, these players are grinding a lot. It's not just they turn up on the day, and play a video game, for 3 hours or whatever. They are grinding a lot in preparation, the anti-stratting, the strats, the maps are changing, agents are coming in, Valorant is a game that changes quite a lot. It's not stale where you can kind of perfect things. There's a lot of things getting thrown at you, and that requires a lot of preparation and a lot of hard work. And so how do we go about fixing it? Well, one solution might be, just play more games in a shorter time span, and therefore, there'll be the same amount of games, but you'll get bigger breaks in between, right? That's one way of fixing it. The problem is for Riot, though, as we see, like the Americas games were played on Sunday, Mondays, Saturdays, right, for the most part. The problem is for Riot, if you do that, then you get games competing with each other, right? And there won't be enough time for the viewers to breathe and take it all in and, manage to, catch all the games that they want to catch, because they're just happening all of the time. And so that doesn't seem like a solution either. But to me, probably the solution that I do think is going to happen will be what the Challengers League in North America looked like this year, where there are 2 groups. I think that this has to be the direction that we end up going, okay? We end up with less games for each of the teams, obviously, instead of playing, the 9 games that it was this year. And oh, by the way, don't forget, it's actually going to be 10 games next year, because there's an extra team in each league. So that's just an extra game added on. Instead of doing that, we get a lot less games per team. You can still spread out all the broadcast days so that, people have enough time to catch the games and have, a schedule that, it's kind of easy enough for people to follow. But there's just less games overall by splitting it into 2 groups, right? This would create a lot more space. It would probably, it would give more space on the calendar to move things around and, give bigger breaks to the teams, because you're just not playing as many games as you would if everyone is in the same league. A crucial thing as well, of course, is that this year it would have been very difficult to seed these groups, right? Like, for instance, for here in any challenges, we don't want M80 and the Guard maybe in the same group because, that might make a group that's incredibly unfair, right? The same might be true in certain leagues as well, where we don't want Loudon, NRG, and EG and Cloud9 all to be in the same group, but that could have happened this year because it would have been very difficult to seed those groups. But, now going forward into next year, maybe that becomes a bit easier. But then this potentially has another problem as well, money. Because I don't know if the sponsors of the VCT leagues have maybe, sponsored to have a certain amount of games be played and have their logos be shown a certain amount of times. But obviously if you play less games, then maybe, that would break the contracts that they've potentially signed with these sponsors. Obviously I don't know what those contracts are, so I wouldn't know. But that is a potential problem as well, that Riot might not be able to do that solution because that doesn't fit in line with what the sponsors want. But next year there might also be a bit of a problem with this suggestion because, of course, this year there was 10 teams, which would be nice to split into 2 groups. Next year there will be 11 teams, which would mean you get one group of 5 and one group of 6, and then assuming they keep the 6 playoff spots like they did this year, the group of 5 has a big advantage because you only have to finish in the top 3 of 5 rather than the top 3 of 6. So, that might cause a bit of a problem as well, who gets into the group of 6, who obviously have to play an extra game as well. So you can see that there's complications even within perhaps what seems like the most obvious solution. Now, if I was in complete control of the situation and could just pick what exactly I thought was the best, I probably would go for the, Challengers League, split them into 2 groups option, even though it would cause some complications. And if the sponsors didn't like that, what I think could be added in as well is basically like the FA Cup equivalent to the Premier League. If you watch football or soccer, you'll know what I'm talking about, where, you have the main league system, but then you also have a entirely separate cup that could be a single elimination, completely online, just like event that literally anyone can, partake in. Even your gold, premier team could join into this tournament, open to literally everyone. And, you just play a tournament and, obviously like the international teams and the pro teams can start a bit later on. They wouldn't have to start playing against a bunch of gold players potentially, but, it's just completely open to everyone to play in a tournament and see who comes out on top. Run 1 for each of the 3 leagues. Therefore, the sponsors, you would still get these games, but because it's like a single elimination tournament that's online, so, the players can play from home, so, there perhaps isn't that same level of burnout. Maybe it's not taken quite as seriously, but it's still run by Riot and it's still a tournament. Maybe like the last 8 or so is ran, in the kind of, LAN environments that they've got for the 3 leagues. And, it gives you the opportunity of seeing tier 2 versus tier 1 teams, right? Or maybe some, crazy group of friends goes on a crazy run and ends up, playing Fnatic in the semifinals or whatever, right? That would be some fun storylines to have. And, with the less games in the actual international leagues, it would give you a bit more time and maybe a bit more space to potentially add something like that in and, be a bit more chill, but still be a tournament that everyone can enjoy and watch. But what is actually going to happen, I don't know. I do think that eventually something will have to change. I feel like the players, maybe particularly after going through it next year, will say to Riot, look, this is too much, right? Particularly for the teams that go deep in tournaments, it's just too much Valorant. We don't get to spend enough time at home with our friends and family. It's too much work. We can't continue like this. So maybe not for next year, but I think the year after, there's a lot of things with the schedule, be it the tier 2 schedules, be it the tier 1 schedules, that probably need some kind of rethink. And to be fair, this is the first year of doing it, so, it makes sense that there are going to be small problems and things that need to get sorted out. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. What would you like to see the schedule look like for the upcoming years to ensure the best for everyone?